The galaxy was old. Civilizations had risen and fallen for millions of years. Empires stretched across the stars, some burning bright, others collapsing into dust. And in this endless night, there was one small blue planet, spinning quietly at the edge of a forgotten arm of the Milky Way. That planet was Earth. For thousands of years, humans had only dreamed of the stars. They looked up at the night sky, seeing endless lights, never knowing that those lights were suns of their own worlds, their own histories, their own wars. To the galaxy, Earth was invisible, a small place with no voice, no power, and no importance. But all of that was about to change. When humanity discovered faster-than-light travel, it did not happen with trumpets or celebration. It happened in silence, in secret laboratories, in hidden stations orbiting their home world. The scientists who worked on it knew the truth. Humanity was stepping into a galaxy already full of predators. If they showed weakness, they would be destroyed. The first test was dangerous. A single ship, fragile and small, jumped across the void. The crew felt the universe stretch and tear, and then, in a flash of impossible light, they were in another system, standing on the edge of the unknown. Humanity had finally broken free of its cradle. At first, they thought they were alone. For months, no signals, no signs, nothing but endless stars. But the silence did not last. One day, the ship's sensors caught a signal. Artificial, intelligent, alien. The crew froze. Every story, every dream of first contact had always been filled with hope. Meeting new friends, learning new knowledge, a handshake across the stars. But when the aliens came, it was not like that. The first aliens humanity met were called the Valari. They were old, far older than Earth's civilizations, and their empire stretched across 100 worlds. Their ships were massive, covered in glowing armor, radiating power. When they saw humans, they did not welcome them. They laughed. To the Valari, humans were children. Fragile, short-lived, pathetic. They looked at human lifespans, barely a century, and shook their heads. They saw the thin skin, the soft bones, the strange emotions, and decided that humans were not worth respect. The Valari told humanity one simple thing: stay in your system. Do not wander where you do not belong. The galaxy has no place for you. The humans listened, but only on the surface. Behind closed doors, leaders argued. Some said humanity should obey, stay hidden, and avoid angering stronger civilizations. Others said the opposite. If we show weakness, they will crush us anyway. The choice was made. Humanity would explore, quietly, carefully, but without stopping. The first wave of ships spread out like sparks in the dark. Small, light, built for speed rather than war. They mapped planets. They recorded alien signals. They learned everything they could. And everywhere they went, they saw the same thing: a galaxy where the strong crushed the weak, where empires grew fat on slavery, where smaller races begged for mercy. To the humans, it was both terrifying and familiar. Their own history was filled with wars, conquests, and empires. They had seen tyranny before. They had fought it, and they had survived. It did not take long for the Valari to notice. Human ships kept appearing in places they were not supposed to be, quietly surveying, quietly recording, sometimes even rescuing smaller species from pirates. At first, the Valari laughed again. But laughter does not last forever. On a quiet night in Earth orbit, a warning came. A Valari fleet had crossed into Sol. Their message was simple: you were told to stay home. Now you will be punished. The world held its breath. Cities went silent. Families gathered around screens, waiting. Humanity had always feared the day when a stronger species would arrive. That day had come. And yet, humanity did not surrender. The Valari expected humans to bow. They expected fear, submission, silence. Instead, they saw a planet ready for war. Every ship, every weapon, every soldier was mobilized. Humanity had learned from its own bloody past. They knew that if they gave up now, there would be no second chance. The Valari laughed one last time. They thought this war would be short. They thought it would be easy. They were wrong. The beginning of humanity's rise had been written, not in words of peace, but in fire. For the first time in history, Earth was no longer just a small blue planet. It was a spark, And soon, the whole galaxy would see the flames. The Valari came like a storm. Their ships cut through the void like burning spears, engines glowing with ancient power. To them, humanity was not an enemy. Humanity was prey. In their war councils, Valari commanders spoke with arrogance. "It will take a week to shatter them," one said. "No, less," said another. "Their world will kneel in days." The fleet moved with confidence. Hundreds of warships, bristling with weapons, each one larger than anything humanity had ever built. They expected Earth to beg for mercy. They expected surrender. But they found something else. On Earth, fear turned into fire. Governments that once argued now stood united. Factories worked day and night. Scientists turned theories into weapons. Soldiers trained with one single thought: this is a fight for survival. The Valari had not studied human history. They had not seen humanity's endless wars, where empires had risen and fallen, where cities had burned and been rebuilt, where armies had fought against impossible odds. They did not understand that humans had been preparing for this kind of struggle for thousands of years, even without knowing it. The first battle came in orbit above Mars. Valari ships arrived in formation, sleek and perfect, firing energy beams that lit the void. Against them, human ships looked fragile, small steel hulls, engines roaring, weapons old by galactic standards. The aliens laughed, but the humans did not fight like the Valari expected. Instead of standing in neat lines, human ships broke into scattered groups. They darted between asteroids, using Mars's moons as cover. They launched swarms of missiles, hundreds at once, overwhelming the Valari shields. One Valari battleship fell, then another. It was unthinkable. No primitive world had ever destroyed them before. The Valari stopped laughing. Earth did not escape untouched. Cities were bombed. Millions died in the first weeks. Families hid in shelters, listening to the rumble of alien weapons shaking the skies. But even as the world bled, it did not break. Every attack only made humanity fight harder. In jungles, deserts, and ruined streets, human soldiers used guerrilla tactics that no alien commander could predict. They set traps. They struck from shadows. They turned every battlefield into a nightmare. Valari troops, trained for clean, ordered warfare, found themselves fighting an enemy that refused to play by the rules. Soldiers who thought they were invincible suddenly vanished in the night, taken by humans who moved like ghosts. The war was no longer a conquest. It was a struggle, and for the first time in centuries, the Valari were afraid. Weeks turned into months. The Valari tried to crush Earth with sheer numbers. They brought more ships, more troops, more firepower. But humans adapted faster. They learned from every loss, every defeat. New weapons appeared on the battlefield: railguns, drones, energy disruptors, all designed in desperate hours, tested in blood. No single invention gave humans victory. But together, they built something stronger than technology: resilience. The Valari could not understand it. Most species they conquered either bent the knee or died quickly, but humans refused. Every village, every street, every ship turned into a fortress. The turning point came at Jupiter. The Valari had gathered their largest fleet to finish the war. They aimed to burn through Earth's defenses in one final strike. But humanity was waiting. They had learned the Valari's patterns, their weaknesses, their arrogance, and they had built a trap. When the Valari fleet entered orbit of Jupiter, the humans unleashed a storm. Hidden stations fired railguns from the shadows of the moons. Swarms of drones, disguised as debris, activated and tore into the enemy. And then, with a desperate gamble, humans detonated nuclear warheads inside Jupiter's atmosphere, creating a massive shockwave that shattered the Valari formation. Dozens of alien ships burned. For the first time in the galaxy's long memory, the Valari suffered a true defeat. The war did not end there, but the message was clear. Humanity could not be broken. In their war councils, Valari leaders argued. Some demanded more troops, more weapons, a full-scale extermination. Others whispered that humanity was cursed, that fighting them only brought shame and ruin. And far away, across the galaxy, other species began to listen. Small races, long crushed under Valari rule, began to hope. They whispered a new word: humans. Back on Earth, the cost was heavy. Cities lay in ruins. Millions had died, But in the ashes, humanity stood taller than ever before. They had survived the impossible. They had fought the strongest empire in their region of space and lived to tell the story. The Valari had set out to teach humanity fear. Instead, they had taught the galaxy something else. That humans would not bow. That humans would not break. The First War was over, but it was only the beginning. The galaxy could not believe what it had seen. The Valari Empire, ancient, powerful, feared, had been stopped, not destroyed, but humiliated. Their fleets limped back into their territory, leaving behind burning wreckage and unanswered questions. For the first time in centuries, the predators of the stars had tasted defeat, and the ones who had given it to them were humans. At first, the other empires laughed. They called it luck. They said the Valari had been careless, arrogant. They told themselves that humans had simply stumbled into victory, that it would never happen again. But then, strange reports began to spread. Scouts spoke of humans landing on worlds that no other species could survive. Frozen planets where the air would kill in minutes. Burning deserts where storms raged for centuries. Poison swamps filled with acid rains. And yet, the humans did not die. They built cities in the snow. They farmed in the dust. They made homes where no other empire would even set foot. Aliens began to whisper, how do they live in such places? The answer was simple. Humans had always lived on the edge of survival. Their home world was filled with deserts, mountains, jungles, and oceans, harsh lands where they had learned to adapt or perish. To them, a toxic sky was just another problem to solve. Where others saw death, humans saw opportunity. On the battlefield, the difference became even clearer. Valari commanders had returned for revenge. They sent new armies, armed with fresh weapons, determined to crush Earth once and for all. But this time, humanity was ready. Alien soldiers were trained to fight in order, in formations, moving like machines. But human soldiers, they fought like storms, unpredictable, wild. A squad of humans would scatter, vanish into ruins, and then strike from 3 sides at once. Others would charge head-on, fearless, screaming like madmen. Where one human fell, another would pick up their weapon and continue. Valari generals called it madness. Human commanders called it survival. Stories spread like fire. On one world, a human unit was cut off, outnumbered 10-1. The aliens thought they had them trapped. But instead of surrendering, the humans dug into the date, set traps with explosives, and fought for days. When rescue ships finally arrived, the aliens were gone, and the humans were still standing. On another planet, human engineers built weapons out of scrap metal, turning farming machines into war machines. They fought with whatever they had, and somehow they made it work. To the galaxy, it was impossible. To humans, it was simply another day. The most terrifying part was not their technology or their numbers. It was their will. When alien soldiers were wounded, they surrendered. When their supplies ran out, they broke. But humans kept going. Soldiers missing limbs refused to stop fighting. Pilots with burning ships dove into enemy carriers, sacrificing themselves for victory. The Valari began to call them Death Walkers, beings who did not fear pain or loss, creatures who fought like the grave itself. And the galaxy began to ask, if they are this dangerous now, what will they become in 100 years? It wasn't just war. It was exploration. Human ships kept spreading out, farther and farther, into places no one else dared to go. They charted nebulae filled with radiation. They crossed asteroid fields where other ships would have been torn apart. They established colonies on worlds everyone else had abandoned as worthless. And every time they thrived, other species had to send specialists trained for one single environment. But humans could adapt to all of them. An alien once wrote, where one of our kind needs a paradise, a human can build a home in hell. The galaxy started to change. Smaller species, long ignored or enslaved, looked at humanity with new eyes. They saw not weakness, but strength. They saw protectors, warriors, allies who would not bend. Some began to seek them out. Quiet envoys, secret messages, whispered pleas. Help us, teach us, lead us. And while humanity had not yet built an empire, the seeds were planted. The weak gathered to their side, and the strong began to fear them. In the Valari halls of power, silence replaced arrogance. Reports kept arriving. Fleets destroyed, colonies lost, soldiers broken by human resistance. The Valari tried to laugh, tried to call it accidents, but in the dark corners of their empire, the truth was spoken aloud. We have awakened something we cannot control. The humans themselves did not see it yet. To them, survival was natural. They did not know that their strange minds, their reckless bravery, their endless ability to adapt made them unlike any other species in the galaxy. But the galaxy knew, the galaxy watched, and the galaxy trembled, because the humans were not just surviving. They were changing the rules. The galaxy was changing. For ages, the great empires had ruled without question. They crushed the weak, traded in slaves, and fought among themselves while believing nothing could challenge their power. But now, whispers spread through the stars. Whispers of a species no one had taken seriously. Humans. At first, the stories were dismissed. Lies, exaggerations, rumors born from desperate refugees. But the whispers grew louder. Fleets destroyed. Colonies liberated. Armies forced into retreat. Wherever humans appeared, chaos followed. Soon, it was no longer whispers. It was fear. In the halls of the Valari Empire, fear turned into anger. The High Council gathered inside their shining towers, their voices echoing with rage. "They are nothing," one shouted. "Fragile creatures who should never have left their world." "Then explain," another said coldly, "why our fleets bleed every time they face them." The council fell silent. They all knew the truth. The Valari had underestimated humans, and the price was being paid in warships and soldiers. Their pride could not admit it, but their fear could not deny it. Other empires watched closely. The Corrid Dominion, rulers of iron worlds, began to study human battles. They noted the madness of their tactics, the way they embraced risk. The Dominion's generals muttered uneasily. They fight as though they want to die, and somehow that is why they live. The Sci-Fi Confederation, masters of trade and politics, feared something else. Not human weapons, but human influence. Wherever humans went, smaller species rallied to them. Slaves escaped their chains. Colonies rose in rebellion. And behind it all, there was always the same symbol, the human flag. The Sci-Fi saw a dangerous truth. Humans were not just fighters. They were leaders. Among the galaxy's weakest, the fear turned into hope. On worlds long crushed under tyranny, refugees began to whisper new prayers. They spoke of human soldiers who never surrendered. Human ships that arrived when all seemed lost. Human captains who swore protection when no one else dared. They called them the Defenders. But the great empires had another name for them. One spoken in fear, in anger, and in dark silence. The Nightmare species. Even in places untouched by war, fear of humanity spread like fire. Merchants refused to trade with human colonies, afraid of Valari punishment. Alien children told each other stories of humans in the dark. Beasts who could not be killed, who would rise again no matter how many times they fell. At first, these were warnings. But over time, the warnings became legends. Legends became myths. And myths became nightmares. The humans themselves did not see the full effect. To them, it was survival. They fought because they had no choice. They built alliances because others asked for help. They explored because that was their nature. But to the galaxy, every step looked like ambition. Every victory looked like conquest. Every colony looked like the beginning of an empire. In council chambers, alien leaders whispered, "If this is what they are after only a few decades in space, what will they be in 1,000 years?" The answers chilled them. In time, the fear grew so great that old enemies began to consider the unthinkable. The Valari sent envoys to the Corrid Dominion, offering alliances. The Sci-Fi Confederation reached out to rivals they had once sworn to destroy. Across the stars, ancient enemies gathered together, united by one single goal, to stop humanity before it was too late. They formed what they called a coalition of order, a grand alliance of empires, pooling their fleets, their armies, their resources. Never before had so many powers stood side by side. To outsiders, it looked like strength, but to those who listened closely, it sounded like desperation. Meanwhile, on Earth, leaders argued once again. Some wanted peace, believing the galaxy could still be reasoned with. Others looked at the growing alliance of enemies and said the truth aloud. They will not let us live. So we must fight, not for survival, but for victory. The humans knew what was coming. The galaxy was preparing for war, not just against their armies, but against their very existence. And so, humanity prepared as well. Factories burned with endless fire. New ships rode from shipyards. Soldiers trained under harsher conditions than ever before. The lessons of the First War had been learned, and this time Earth would not wait to be attacked. The galaxy trembled. In their fear, the empires had united against humanity, but in doing so, they had made a fatal mistake. They had told the humans that they were feared, and for humanity, fear was never a chain. It was fuel. The greatest war in galactic history was about to begin. The galaxy had chosen its enemy. From the core worlds to the outer edges, empires set aside centuries of hatred to face one threat: humanity. They called it a coalition of order, but in truth, it was built on fear. Valari fleets, Korath war machines, Sci-Fi diplomats, and dozens of smaller powers, all sworn to crush the humans before they became unstoppable. For the first time in living memory, the galaxy stood united. The invasion began with silence. Across human space, the stars seemed empty. No traders, no pirates, no signals. Then, all at once, the void erupted with fire. Thousands of warships appeared at the borders of human colonies, blocking every path of escape. Entire fleets were trapped. The coalition moved quickly, burning worlds one by one. Colonies were bombarded, space stations torn apart, outposts erased from the maps. They wanted to make an example, to show humanity that resistance was useless. But Earth remembered the Valari War. Humanity had survived impossible odds before, and this time they were ready. The first great battle took place at the edge of Alpha Centauri. The coalition brought 500 warships, massive carriers, and dreadnoughts bristling with weapons. Against them, the humans had barely 100 ships. Smaller, lighter, weaker. The coalition commanders expected another easy victory, but the humans did not meet them in open battle. Instead, they scattered into asteroid belts, vanishing from sensors. Coalition ships moved in, confident, hunting their prey. That was when the traps were sprung. Mines hidden in the rocks exploded. Railguns fired from camouflaged platforms. Human ships darted from cover, hitting and vanishing before the coalition could respond. When the battle ended, the coalition had lost a third of its fleet, and the humans still stood. It was only the beginning. Everywhere the coalition advanced, they found resistance. Human soldiers fought from ruins, using tunnels, caves, even saw systems to strike from nowhere. Civilian ships became warships. Cargo haulers turned into missile carriers. Farmers became snipers. The galaxy had never seen war like this. Coalition generals grew frustrated. They do not fight like soldiers, one complained. They fight like animals. But the truth was worse. Humans fought like survivors. They did not care about rules or traditions. They fought to win. Still, the coalition's numbers were overwhelming. Worlds burned. Millions died. The weight of the galaxy pressed down, and for a moment, it seemed humanity would finally be crushed. Then came the counterattack. It started small. Human fleets struck isolated convoys, vanishing before reinforcements arrived. Then they attacked supply lines, cutting off fuel and food. On occupied planets, resistance cells rose, guided by human commanders who slipped through enemy lines. Each victory was small, but together they formed a storm. The greatest strike came at Orion's Gate, a massive star fortress built by the coalition to control human trade routes. It was said no fleet could destroy it. The humans did not try to. Instead, they infiltrated it. A team of human commandos, disguised as slaves, smuggled aboard explosives. At the heart of the fortress, they triggered the charges, ripping the station apart from within. The explosion lit up the system, and with it, the coalition lost its most powerful stronghold. The galaxy watched in shock. Fear began to creep into the coalition itself. Soldiers muttered about the humans. Officers whispered that fighting them was cursed. Even entire species began to question the alliance. The Sci-Fi worried that their colonies were next. The Korath grumbled that the Valari had dragged them into a war that could not be won. And in secret, some began sending messages to humanity, offering information, or even alliance. The coalition had gathered to destroy fear, but fear was now eating it from the inside. And then came the battle that changed everything, the siege of Earth. The coalition gathered its greatest armada, more than 1,000 ships. They surrounded the Sol system, confident this would end the war. Earth stood alone. From orbit, the planet looked small, fragile, defenseless. But beneath its blue skies, billions prepared for the fight of their lives. Satellites armed with kinetic weapons. Lunar bases converted into artillery. Civilian ships retrofitted for combat. Even the oceans had submarines carrying missiles. When the coalition fleet advanced, Earth unleashed everything. The sky itself turned into fire. Missiles filled the void. Rail guns tore through shields. Nuclear warheads detonated in blinding light. And through the chaos, human ships charged into impossible odds, breaking enemy lines again and again. The battle raged for days. Cities on Earth shook from orbital bombardment. But when the smoke cleared, the coalition had not conquered Earth. Their fleets were shattered, their armies beaten back. Humanity had stood against the galaxy's greatest armada, and survived. The war was far from over, but the message was clear. The galaxy had come to destroy humanity. Instead, it had awakened something greater. An empire was being born,